Welcome to my channel! One of the hardest things as an entrepreneur is that we are constantly being reminded of the things that we have to do. And now, as we're getting into the holiday season, it becomes yet another thing that we have to do. As I've been working with a lot of clients over the past 5 years, just helping them build their personal sales and marketing strategies for their e-commerce businesses, what's been coming up for me is that a lot of people feel unprepared during the holiday season. And that is what prompted me to do this episode that's going to talk about how do you not feel overwhelmed over the holiday season, and what can you do as a CEO, as a founder, as a brand builder to be 100% ready, but also to achieve maximum success and make a lot of sales during this period. If you're new to my channel, I want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Maureen Mwangi. I am a brand growth strategist, and I help e-commerce product entrepreneurs by teaching them the sales and marketing strategies they need to turn their beloved product brands into a household name. So when it comes to all things holiday, what are some of the things that I have seen that causes a lot of people to be unsuccessful during this period? And the first thing is poor planning. And when I say poor planning, what am I really referencing? I'm talking about people really creating and customizing their marketing plans and their marketing calendars to meet their customers where they're at. Many people tend to be more reactive instead of being more proactive. And it's just the nature of being a small business owner. Not to shame you, not to put any pressure upon you, but it's just something to realize, because during the holiday season, the marketing plans tend to be very different compared to the regular times of the year. During the holiday season, there's so many moving parts in your business. There's so many moving parts with regards to the competitive landscape, which requires you to be operating in a different fashion versus how you've been doing it in the past. And what do I mean by poor planning when it comes to your marketing calendars? What happens is I'm also a small business owner, and I have to take intentional effort to really remind myself, what do I want to be promoting in a particular quarter? So in the e-commerce space, and as I work with founders, what I've seen oftentimes is people really jump onto thinking about the holidays towards the tail end of October or beginning of November, when the market is already noisy, when so many things are happening, and they sort of piece things together, and this reactivity results to sales that are not optimal or what you desired. And so what do I typically recommend when it comes to designing a strategic marketing plan for the holiday season? What I usually say is, first of all, really think about, are there certain macro trends within your respective product category that you really want to tap into? So for example, it could be all things wellness. Right now, as I'm recording this, it's all about really pouring into yourself. It's all about slow living. It's all about the entire whole concept of wellness from an inside outward approach. So that's a category specific lens. And so the thing for you would be, what are the micro trends that my brand can tap into in order to really support that overarching messaging? As if you're in the fashion space, it could be just really embodying your body, loving who you are, the way you are, really looking into your self-image. And you could use fashion as a great example of a micro trend that taps into a macro trend. And when that happens, customize your messaging and really stand out in the crowd. So right now, as you're really thinking about the holiday planning, I'd love for you to ask yourself, what is it that I can say that will give me a 1% edge? Right? This is what I'm talking about when I say strategic planning. A lot of people don't really understand when I say building brands with scientific precision or strategic planning. They really think about it as having an entire year of content that you're going to put out. But what I'm really talking about is, how do you make your marketing and your messaging relevant to your audience in this season? That is really what helps you fight the second challenge that comes in that leads to unsuccessful holiday plans, really being despair and compare. A lot of people become so discouraged during this season because they think that the market is saturated. Granted, the market is saturated. A lot of people in the product space really thrive by selling during this season. It's pretty much the highest selling season. Q3, Q4 starts tapering down in Q1 of the following year, and then in the summer you tend to experience a lull. And so how do you sort of reverse the trend when it comes to despair and compare? And the best way to really reverse this is to talk about relevancy, is to really be top of mind when it comes to your audience. It's customizing your messaging, your overarching messaging pillar and your hierarchy to meet them where they're at, to speak about culture or be top of mind based on what is happening, and really tie in those macro trends or macro moments to your micro moments within your brand. That is the only way you can fight the noise. And why I say this is because I myself am a consumer in this space, and we do get bombarded with a lot of emails, especially around Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And you're just like, what email do I want to open? And I really lean into opening those that are sent by brands that I truly love, those that are sent by brands that I back and I absolutely interested and willing to support. And there's a reason why they've really occupied a space in my mind, and it's because of that relevancy. It's because of what they stand for. It's because of their conviction. It's because of them articulating and voicing out what they really stand for, and really being unapologetic about why they're here, right? It's not vanilla content at its best. It's not generic content at its best. It really has conviction, and that conviction nudges me to be a loyal customer. So even when Black Friday is coming up, they're constantly ready to buy, right? So really ask yourself, how can I make my content relevant? How can I tie in campaigns that are absolutely relevant instead of thinking about the incentive? Because what happens in this space that also is another element, the third element of why brands tend to have unsuccessful campaigns, is people create discounts without any strategy behind it. The discounts aren't strategic, and what happens here is most people copy what's typically done. Most people look at what their friends and the people in their competitive set are doing and decide to do that. Well, for some people it might be successful, for others it may not be successful. But what do I really always think about when it comes to designing a discount plan that is going to be highly effective and efficient in your business? First things first is, who is this person behind the brand? What is it that they value? Second of all, it's what is the overarching messaging that I'm trying to communicate during this season, right? And then what is the incentive that will lure them into buying that product? If you think about the hierarchy of how I have listed out the things that I've talked about, the customer, the relevancy, and the incentive, you'll notice that the incentive is usually the last thing. Because when you have a strategic incentive that you've designed, ultimately you will see a lot of success, because there's a method to your madness. There's a reason why you created this, and you'll be able to sell them into that offer. Because what people do and what people think happens is that they'll see the 20% and then decide, oh, I'm just gonna get this product for 20% off. But remember, the person behind the purchasing is a human being, and they're going to ask themselves, am I willing to spend this $80? I'm assuming your product costs $100 and you've taken 20% off, so they're gonna buy it for $80. I'm like, am I willing to spend $80 now? If so, why? So they're going to justify the reason as to why they're buying the product. And the only way for them to make sense and to justify their final purchase will be because of A, is it for me? Am I the right person to buy this product? And B, is this message relevant for me? And then the incentive is the last thing. So if you're really just thinking about the incentive or splashing on an incentive that is going to get people to buy, I'd really invite you to think about the customer behind this, which is your ultimate ideal client, your brand admirer, whatever you choose to call, and then the relevancy of, meaning the messaging during this season, and then what incentive is going to motivate them to buy. The fourth thing that results into these campaigns being unsuccessful for a lot of people is people start customer acquisition quite late. What I often see is because people realize Black Friday around maybe mid-October, tail end of October, and really get aggressive with it is in November. At that point in time, it's pretty much sort of too late to acquire a new person. Why? Every new person you acquire needs to be prepped, needs to be primed, needs to be nurtured in order for them to eventually buy. If you're jumping into customer acquisition towards the holiday season, it's going to be impossible for you to really have a successful plan. And also, if you run paid ads at that particular point in time, ads tend to be so expensive. Why? Because the big brands are literally just pouring the money that they have set aside during this season to run their holiday program events. With that perspective, or with that in mind, that is not the best time for an emerging brand. So what I usually recommend is people to start thinking about aggressive customer acquisition in the month of October. That is when you're going to have a lot of success, because if you prime people during that time, by the time you're running the Black Friday, Cyber Monday campaigns and the Christmas holiday campaigns, they're going to be really warmed up, really will start knowing what you offer for your brand and will eventually buy. I'm assuming you haven't really had aggressive efforts earlier on. My take is usually like you're constantly building people in Q2 and early Q3 to get people ready to buy, because during the holiday season, what typically happens, that's a conversion period. That's not a list growth period. That's not a customer acquisition period. In that period, it's conversion first, then list building or a customer acquisition second. The next one is typically people running paid ads absolutely late. So it just becomes very expensive to acquire a customer. You bleed in a lot of cash. When you bleed in a lot of cash and you're bringing in people who are not nurtured, they're not going to participate during that season unless you are literally creating something at a throwaway price. But even that, it's just been hard for brands that have little to no brand awareness in the space. And then ultimately, the last thing that I've seen really contribute to people not having successful holidays is people really focus on activities that are not needle movers. Activities that are not needle movers really center around my product photography, the ribbons I'm gonna use, the color scheme, my website banners. While all this is good, all this is aesthetically pleasing, if we've not dialed in our audience, we haven't made our messaging relevant in this particular season by tying in a macro trend to a micro trend within our brand, or a macro moment with a micro moment in our brand, it's not going to lead to conversion. If we haven't looked at an optimal incentive for our product, just having something beautifully well designed, well laid out may really not drive conversion, because what happens is those things that are pleasing to the eyes just excite you, and then the human brain comes in. They try to rationalize why they're going to make a purchasing decision. Like the rational part, the logical part of the brain kicks in, and we've got to decide. So it's really, what is the reason behind them deciding to spend on your brand? So if you can really think about the things I've talked about, I'd love for you to really evaluate what part of this have I been missing in the past, and what 2 things can I implement this season in order for me to see success? Because those are the general overarching themes I have seen that have caused a lot of brands to be highly unsuccessful. And you know what happens when you have an unsuccessful holiday plan? You get to this point where you have a lot of inventory by the end of the year. Emerging brands typically operate on a calendar year, meaning the books close in December, they jump into a new year for planning, right? And so when you have a lot of inventory that you're holding onto, the next year really doesn't have a lot of momentum, because you're just looking at, I'm sitting on a lot of cash. So in January, you're already starting to think about, how can I offload this inventory that I just don't know what to do with it? And for some people, the best buy dates could be coming up really soon. For some people, if in the fashion space, it could be out of season. So you would start experiencing out of stock or out of relevancy. In the fashion space, it's people don't need to wear them at that particular time. For other brands like the beauty space, things start expiring, you're running out of what to sell, but you still have this and you haven't sold, so you have a lot of inventory that you're holding on to at the beginning of the year. And ultimately, because we are human beings and we are the people behind this brand, we get really frustrated. We get really discouraged at the beginning of the year, and we lose the momentum. Rather than starting the year with so much excitement, with so much force and wind behind your brand, you're just thinking, what do I do with all of this, right? And that is why, I truly have worked with brands that have had successful holiday plans. And what we've really done is we picked two of the elements I covered today, worked really hard on it, but the main one we've really anchored on is strategic marketing planning, ensuring that we have relevancy and we're establishing relevancy within our brand, at understanding what are the trends that are happening within our respective segment, understanding what is a micro moment or a micro trend that we can comfortably support or we can comfortably go behind in order to have a successful plan. And then the last thing is, when you have a lot of inventory, it just becomes really hard to just be excited. When you are not excited, it just trickles down to your business. It becomes really hard to sort of do the things that every business owner is supposed to do, because every season changes. The minute you finish December, you're supposed to be building marketing plans for January, February, and rolling on like nothing happened in the past. And the little to no momentum does impact people so much. And my desire is that you don't get to experience that you have an opportunity to have a very successful plan. So now, when you've gotten to this point, you're just like, what do I need to do? What I would really recommend right now in this season, at this point in time, is I would really want you to become aggressive in your customer acquisition efforts. When I talk about customer acquisition, as I'm releasing this, it is September, right? You've been lucky enough to get to listen to this content in September. And in September and October, primarily October, I really want you to aggressively work on your customer acquisition efforts. If you do events, I want you to make sure that you're collecting phone numbers if you do text message marketing. I also want to make sure you are collecting email addresses if you do email marketing, and I hope you are doing email marketing. And make sure you're getting consent from people. Just collect that if you're doing offline events. If you are doing online activities and you really want to ensure that you're getting people, I want you to double down on getting them to your welcome series. You're writing out very meaty, valuable content in your welcome series, because that is what is ultimately going to convert, and that is what is ultimately going to get them to be ready and buy. Because in this phase between the month of September and October, I want you to be prepping and priming. That is what I want you guys to take away from this episode. You're prepping and priming your audience to buy, because this is a season for list growth, and then conversions will come after. So you're prepping and priming, you're nurturing them to take the next step, because that is how you're going to win during the holiday season. Otherwise, it's going to be just another season where you miss on the volume, the velocity, and the excitement that a lot of brands experience during this time. If this episode has been of absolute value to you, I'd love for you to watch the video that's going to pop up on your screen, where I'm going to really walk you through an ultimate step-by-step guide for designing a promotional strategy, understanding the basics of a promotional strategy and what that looks like and why you need to do it, whether it's relevant for your brand and whether it's something that you are willing to double into. Because I've constantly said this, all promotions are not created equal. Not all brands need to do promotions. This is a personal decision, a subjective decision that the brand owner or the brand founder is going to decide. And this video is going to really educate you on that. And with that, I will see you in the next one.